Hey guys, Shot the Monkey here, and I want to bring you a first impressions slash review of the Tier 5 premium Japanese fighter, the A6M3 Experimental. I've only had this aircraft for a few games, but I've had enough experience with the A6Ms in the regular Japanese tech tree, both in previous versions of World of Warplanes, in games like War Thunder and in IL-2 Sturmovik, that I know enough about them to fly it out. And I've worked out the little quirks that this aircraft has, so I want to give you guys some advice on how to make the most use of this if you're either A, thinking of picking this aircraft up, or B, already own it and might be having a bit of trouble with it. First things first, I'm going to make a few points. Your aircraft, in this case the A6M3, is balanced around two things. First being the manoeuvrability stats here, and second being this gun armament, specifically these two 30mm Type 2 cannons. Those two aspects are what your aircraft is balanced around. So, as a result of that, you lose out in the airspeed department, you definitely lose out in survivability, and your altitude performance isn't great. However, I'm hoping that I can give you some tips and advice to try and minimise those flaws and benefit the most from the absolutely amazing bonuses you have in regards to the aircraft as a whole and these cannons. So, first thing I'm going to cover, I want to look into equipment. After 2 games of flying this without equipment, I've decided that this setup is, I think, in my opinion, the most optimal one for the aircraft. The first being improved covering, just to give you a slight benefit to your survivability. I'm not looking at the extra aircraft HP so much as I am looking at the reduced chance of critical damage to wings and tail. Your manoeuvrability is your lifeblood in this aircraft. If you can't manoeuvre, you are dead. You don't have enough airspeed and you don't have enough hit points to do anything else. So this should be your first and last method of getting out of trouble. Next thing, improved reflector sight. Again, these 30mm cannons are the majority of that gun armament score. The more you can put these cannons on target and land straight on the enemy aircraft, the more kills you're going to get, the more critical damage you do to enemy aircraft, the more crippled aircraft you'll leave around. If you can't get kills, don't worry. You can pretty much live off assists, and you will get assists quite easily with these things. Lastly, lightweight airframe, manoeuvrability in all axes. Obvious choice for an aircraft like the A6M. There's also, you can make the argument for control surface adjustment, which is manoeuvrability specifically in turns, but I'd rather go for manoeuvrability in all axes. If you guys want to swap improved covering over for control surface adjustment, I won't say it's a bad choice. It's equally, I think, as viable. In the same way, you could also swap improved reflector sight over for control surface adjustment. That's down to your personal playstyle. I think this upgrade setup is what suits best for me. Next thing I'm going to cover is pilot skills. For me, again, Marksman 1 and Marksman 2 will be the first skills that I pick up with this guy. Again, just for the reduced dispersion and the higher chance to hit aircraft with these 30mm cannons. Because, again, they are what your aircraft is balanced around, so the better you can make the performance of those guns, the better. After that, I would probably go for the skill down here, which I think is Manoeuvrability Expert. The pop-up is very kindly not appearing, so that's a bit awkward. But any skills again down here that improves your manoeuvrability of the aircraft is always worthwhile. So Battle Tested, and I think that's Manoeuvrability Expert, which is this skill just here, and that skill just there are the next ones I'd recommend after you've picked up Marksman. Beyond that point, I think it's entirely down to personal preference. Those are the only skills that I'd consider mandatory, if not mandatory, then highly optimal. Into service. Consumables, control surface trim. Again, as I said earlier, your manoeuvrability is your lifeblood, so the better you can keep your aircraft in manoeuvring state, the better off you're going to be through the game. First aid dressing package to heal your pilot. Again, if your pilot is injured, your manoeuvrability drops. Your manoeuvrability is what keeps you alive. You want that to be maintained at as high standard as possible. And fire extinguishers, it's a Japanese aircraft. While this game isn't as advanced like games like War Thunder or IL-2 in modelling self-sealing fuel tanks and armor protection, you have low hit points. That's enough. If you are set on fire and you can't put it out, that fire alone, if it burns on for long enough, can take you out of the game. Especially if you've been, obviously you'd have been hit before that point, before you've been set on fire. So fires you want to be put out immediately, so run manual fire extinguisher. I wouldn't recommend taking a pneumatic restarter. While having a damaged engine isn't ideal, your stall speed in this aircraft is so impressively low that you can really manage that just by picking your manoeuvres well enough with a damaged engine until it's naturally repaired. There is an argument that could be made for reinforced control surfaces if you want to run either of these. That's down to personal preference. It's not a bad choice. This is just the setup I've gone for. With regards to ammunition, I haven't used Universal in here. As you can see, I've been tempted to, but I haven't put them in yet. I wouldn't disagree with you guys if you wanted to use universal or even gold high explosive ammo in these cannons, because they are devastating, and the critical damage chance is ridiculously high if you can get a few hits on these. The 7.7s are sort of your backup weapon. I wouldn't recommend using any of the special rounds in these, although if you were going to use it, if you're willing to spend credits, then universal, of course. If you're willing to spend gold, high explosive incendiary. Because if you can get the fire chance up on these and then get a ridiculous critical damage chance from these cannons, that's a nasty combination that is going to make people use up consumables. And if they use them up once and you hit them again, that's it. They're out of there. Anything else I need to cover about this aircraft? Yes. One thing I need to cover, and this is just from watching a review of this aircraft by Gaming Bear. If you want to get that review out by Gaming Bear, it's a great review. Honestly love the guy. I think he puts some great reviews out and some great content out there, and he's a brilliant YouTuber. He deserves all the views and subscribers he can get. Absolutely cool guy. Can't recommend him enough. So if you want to check out Gaming Bear's review of this aircraft, either after mine or if you've already seen it before mine and you're coming here for an alternate view, great way to go about it. Cool guy, Gaming Bear. Hats off to you. But one thing that he does in his review of this aircraft, which I personally don't, is he holds down the left mouse button for the entire time that his guns are on target. And I think that's a bit of a waste, because what you notice throughout the entire game is that his 30mm cannons are nearly permanently overheated, and those cannons, when overheated, do not fire at all regularly enough to be worth overheating your guns for. Your damage from those guns drops off considerably, especially with the inaccuracy that they naturally have to balance them out. What I'd suggest with this is the way you want to play it is you want to either, if you can, bind your cannons and your machine guns to different buttons, if that's an option. If it's not, only fire your guns based on how well your cannons are doing. If your cannons overheat, stop firing all your guns. Let your cannons cool down, re-engage the target. You want to keep that, always be looking down to wherever I think it's the bottom left-hand side of the screen is where your cannon overheat symbol is. When you start to see your cannons getting close to overheating, or if they have overheated and you hear that rate of fire drop off, stop firing, let them cool down, re-engage the target. If there's someone in front of you and you've got them in a manoeuvring fight, they're not getting away from you, unless they can dive and pull a lot of airspeed. But even then, you have enough to be able to get away with this in most cases. It'd have to be a very long dive, or they'd have to have got a lot of energy in the fight already for them to get away from you. If you get into a moving fight, you have the luxury to just let your cannons recover from overheating, get them back into a nice settled state, give them the good news again, wait till the cannons overheat, pull off the trigger. I know it's probably really tempting, and a lot of people probably don't realise they're doing it, is just holding that left mouse button down or holding whatever fire button assigned you have, just to have everything firing for as long as possible. But if you do that, your cannons will overheat, and these two machine guns are not good enough to carry you. They're only really good enough to finish off already quite badly damaged aircraft. Maybe, to set the odd fire, but that's down to RNG. That's not reliable. If you want reliable, consistent damage, allow your cannons to rest between each engagement. Don't starve them. Don't constantly have them sat on that overheating line and just firing really consistently, because it won't do you any good. It won't get you any kills. And if you sit behind a target for that long and get target fixated, there's every chance that someone jumps in behind you, gets guns on target for this aircraft, and these 189 hit points with my setup don't last long. They really don't. They don't last long to fire from enemy aircraft. They don't last long under continuous rear gunner or defensive gunner fire, and they certainly don't like AA gunfire coming up after you. The AA gunfire problem you'll see in the replay for coming up for the battle, because I was forced to put this into a ground attack role just to try and clear out AA guns so that I kept as many hit points as possible, and you'll see how much this aircraft struggles doing that. If you can avoid it at all, if you can avoid going after ground targets, avoid it at all costs. The same with bombers or attackers that have defensive gunners. If you have to engage them, try and do it at the maximum effective range of these 30mm cannons, which is, 500 metres up to 625. In most cases there, you're outside of the effective defensive fire range of the defensive gunners on most aircraft that you'll run into anyway. So if you're going to engage bombers and attack aircraft that have defensive gunners, use the maximum range on these cannons. Just take your time, sit at distance. Let your cannons do the work. Don't try and close in to put your machine guns in there, because they'll just fire back at you and you'll lose those hit points, and you need to keep them as much as possible. The easiest way to consider this is that every fight you get into, every chance that someone gets to put guns on target on your aircraft is a chance that they'll kill you. That's the best mindset to have, is that every time someone can shoot you, they kill you. If you think about it that way, you will have no problem keeping this thing out of fights that it doesn't want to be in. I know this is probably going to sound like a bit of a meme. You want to play it like an assassin. You want to look for juicy backs. Anybody that isn't paying attention to you or is already involved in a fight, or even guys that have gone up for a climb and are stalling out, they're your priority targets. Pick off guys that aren't going to see it coming, or if they do see it coming, can't do anything about it. Because those 30 mils will rip aircraft apart. I think you get about 5 seconds of firing rate before you overheat, and that's enough. In 5 seconds, that is a lot of damage you can put out with these guns. Anyway, with that being said, I think that's all I really need to tell you guys about. So, if you guys are thinking of picking this up, or you've picked this aircraft up already, I hope what I've said here, and if you check out Gaming Bear's review, I hope what he said helps you out, and helps you get the most out of this aircraft, because I think it's absolutely brilliant. I'm so glad to see this thing's turned up in the premium store as a regular on the premium shop, because it's such a unique and fun and absolutely amazing looking aircraft that has this devastating firepower, and that can't be understated enough. These things will put XFL1s to shame if you get the right engagement on it. They really will. Anyway, that's enough of me gushing about this absolute Japanese beauty. I'll let you watch the battle replay coming up, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers, thanks very much. Okay guys, so into the game we go. I will admit, this one I started in a bit late. The game had already started by the time that I was physically in it. It took a long time loading this one in. But I think what I'll do for the first time for these videos is try giving you a little annotation into, what it was that I was thinking, what it was that I was doing, why I was doing certain things, what I was thinking at the time, just to give you a bit more of an idea of what goes through, at least my head, when I'm playing a game like this, or playing any game of, World of Warplanes, World of Tanks, whatever it might be. So, yeah, getting to the action, as you can see there, at the top right, the sortie started about 30 seconds ago. And you can see here that I'm trying to mess around with my settings because the game was just suddenly frozen and I wasn't sure what it was, but it comes back here, and we're about 30 seconds into the fight. So I'm just getting my bearings, working out where I want to go, and I've decided I'm going to go towards the command centre objective over here because we've only got 2 aircraft heading that way, and I believe that both of them at this point were AI aircraft. I know there was a 110 that stuck around that point for a long time during the game, which was piloted by an AI, and I have to admit, I thought it was a player for most of this game, just because of how he was acting and what he was doing. But yeah, first things first, get over to one of the capture points, take out the AI defenders down here, and see if we can take it over. So picking the first target, going for the high altitude one of the two, because he's most dangerous in my opinion. Getting in as close as I can, and giving him the good news. You can see there just burst firing the cannons, because I'm constantly watching that little overheat icon in the bottom left hand side of the screen. Taking quite a bit of AA fire here. I'm just trying to do as many manoeuvres as I can to try and avoid being damaged too badly by them. See, once again the guns are overheating, so break away, change targets. Next boomerang's coming in, so give him the good news. Leading a bit badly there. So I corrected my aim, and then we get some nice hits in. There's one down. I've just done the second one, just heard it go past me before I turned, so I know he's nearby. Get back on him. Hit him a few times with 30 mils, and there we go. Problem solved. Now we run into a problem here, where we've taken out all the AI defensive aircraft, and we haven't captured the point. So I now take this aircraft down to the deck and try and take out these AA guns, because I know that if I just continue to fly around and wait for those boomerangs to respawn to try and get the points from those, these AA guns will destroy me. But as you can start to see here, these guns are not ideal for taking out ground targets, simply because of how kind of inaccurate they are and how quickly they overheat. You don't get the kind of sustained fire that you'd want for clearing ground targets unless you start firing at very close ranges within about 300 meters. And that's when you'll get the air guns usually down quite quickly. As you can see here, start firing from about 400 meters away, and it's gone in one pass just as they overheat. That's about as far out as you want to be shooting at ground targets with these guns. Ideally, you want 300 meters or less. But as you can see down there, every time I have to fly in a straight line to keep the guns on target to take out these air guns, I lose a big chunk of health. Yeah, we lost 100 hit points, we're down to the last 80. I've now got to go up and deal with a defence fighter that's respawned. Aiming a bit poorly there. Just trying to get the speed up so that I can get the guns on target with him again. And now he's gone. As you can see now, I've lost a few more hit points to the AA fire there. So I'm now down into the bottom percentage where you get your health to regen if you're not being shot at. Still taking fire, there's still AA guns active, so I've got to clear these if I'm going to get any health back. As you can see there, more hit points down. You take some big hits doing this. This really is not the ideal situation for an aircraft like this, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Another boomerang comes in, so I'm going to go climb into the vertical to get on his tail. Nearly capture the point. Another boomerang coming in for a dive. And there he goes. And that's the point captured. Down to the last 19 health out of the 189 that I started this fight with. So you can see how much having to deal with that AAA and the defensive fighters at the same time really has taken my hit points out. And I'm going to be at this low health state for the rest of the game until I eventually am killed right at the end after the score line is passed and you can no longer respawn. So what I'm thinking now is there's only one aircraft left and it's a bomber at high altitude, so I can afford to head to another capture point and leave the heavy fighter we've got here to chase the Dornier 17 altitude. A heavy defensive fighter just spawned in as well, so I'm quite comfortably leaving that there because I think everything's going to be okay and the problems behind me are going to be sorted by our AI defensive fighters and the BF-110 piloted by the AI. Looking around for targets here. Seeing what's available, what I can afford to go after, what I can't afford to go after, and then I spot on the minimap there's more fighters heading into the point behind me, a total of 2 so far. So I turn back round and head back to the command post again. We've captured the point that I was heading towards, and we've got 3-4 guys around there, only 1 fighter, so we're outnumbered back on the command centre, so I'm going to head back there and see if I can help our team out. As you can see, the speed of this aircraft really not helping. It does take a long time to travel to and from points, even on a map like this. Just trying to work out target selection. You can see the 190 is probably the most dangerous out of all the aircraft here. And he's already been damaged, so in theory he's an easier kill. Taking some shots at a longer range than I'd like to. Swapped with the 109, I think this is. Yeah, 109 E series that cuts up quite close to me. But in taking him out, I have another 109 that comes and gets past on me. I'm lucky he doesn't kill me there or cause any further critical damage. And now it's just about trying to control my airspeed and control this engagement so that I can get in on his tail. And there we go. We'll admit the cannons weren't exactly doing that well in these kind of engagements. Finally they get the hits, and that's what takes him out. Still got 2 enemy aircraft in the area. Going to go down for this I-16, because the other aircraft above me I've realised is there's still the Dornier 17, so he's the only aircraft at altitude that I can comfortably engage. Finally get the lead for the 30 mils, and that takes him down. And now you can see the quite impressive capability this thing has to just climb vertically upwards. Of course I don't show it in full there. I have to wait a bit for my boost to come back. But with a stall speed of 90 kilometers an hour, you can push the nose of this aircraft completely vertical and climb vertically upwards without issues, as you're going to see here. Take a few speculative shots, then level the aircraft out because I'm getting close to that stall speed warning. Regain a bit of energy, let the boost come back a bit. Only has 6 seconds of boost on this aircraft. Push the nose up, activate the boost again. And now we're in closer for where I can start taking more accurate shots with these 30 mils. Just as on the edge of the stall speed, finally get him. And there we go. Bring the nose back down, regain speed. And in the background I'm quite excited. So there's a bit of microphone audio that I won't include in this video for the sake of putting it on YouTube, but let's just say I was quite happy with this aircraft and its performance so far. Although looking at the aircraft coming in now, looking that the scoreline's gone past, I'm expecting one of the 3 aircraft that are currently in this fight to finish me off. Take the XFL out because he was stalling up at altitude. 190 catches me, sets me on fire, managed to get the fire extinguisher on it. So I've got 13 hit points left, get on his tail. He hasn't got the energy to climb away, and before he can get into a dive, his engine's gone, and there goes his aircraft. 109 comes back in. I've not really got any options here but to take a head on and hope that I get some hits in. And there we go. That's the game over. However, I've done well enough at this point that the team has pretty much won. We've got 3 capture points to their 2, and we're contesting one of those. 8,700 points, which turns on to be 9,700 points by the game's over. And as you'll see at the results, that we get quite a nice profit here. I think it's somewhere in the region of 131,000 credits profit for 9,700 points. First place on the team, you know, I can't complain. Great aircraft, guys. Great aircraft. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Take care, and I'll see you next time.